through the whole thing, and it wasn't recording. So we are in Joshua chapter 18 today, and we're in the allotments of the remaining land. So they're coming into the Holy Land. They've been given the word. They're supposed to clear everybody out and take over the land. But we know that they don't. They take over the easier parts of the land to conquer, but they leave the rest as, they're not hurting anybody. And so this is the framework for how Israel will become disobedient and worship foreign gods, and they're going to intermarry, and they're going to do all the things that Moses said they shouldn't do. So now we have the remaining land, now that the land was under Israelite control. So again, we have grandiose writers. The Bible is written by humans, inspired by God. So sometimes you get things that are the living word of God, God is speaking, and sometimes you're getting a human accounting. This is a human accounting. The land was under Israel control. Joshua is writing this to sound good about things, but the previous 2 chapters, we just read about the places that weren't under control and weren't taken over. So this is Joshua saying, well, it's good enough. So the land is under Israelite control, and the entire community of Israel gathered at Shiloh and set up the tabernacle. So the tabernacle, remember, is that tent of meeting that has all of those poles and lampstands and curtains and brocade, and it takes time to set up the tent of meeting. And so they don't do it when they come into the promised land until they feel a little more settled. It's like taking out your fine china when you're moving. It might be one of the last things you unpack. And if you anticipate you're moving again anytime soon, you don't bother getting it out. This is the case for the tent of meeting. Should it be that way? Not really. This is God's home. They maybe shouldn't have waited till they felt all comfy, cozy, settled to unpack it, but they did. And so they're unpacking the tabernacle. But there remained 7 tribes who had not yet been allotted their grants of land. So Joshua asked them, how long are you going to wait before taking possession of the remaining land of the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given to you? Remember, when God says you'll take the land and this is your apportionment, this is Joshua just saying, here's your boundary lines. Go get it. Go do it. And here we have 7 tribes who actually were told where they could go, and they go, nah, that looks hard. I don't want to do that. And so they stick around with all the rest. And here's Joshua going, aren't you going to get to work? Aren't you going to do what you were told to do? So Joshua says, select 3 men from each tribe, and I will send them out to explore the land and map it out. They will then return to me with a written report of their proposed divisions of their new homeland. Let them divide the land into 7 sections, excluding Judah's territory in the south and Joseph's territory in the north. And when you record the 7 divisions of the land and bring them to me, I will cast sacred lots in the presence of the Lord our God to assign land to each tribe. So the Lord is asking for them to take the initiative, and they don't. And so Joshua, like a good leader, says, okay, that seems too overwhelming for y'all. Let me break it down a little further. I will help you develop a strategy. I will help you, but you need to pick some leaders who are going to partner with me in this. Interestingly enough, this is not unlike what happens in churches where you have things that people want to see get done, but they don't want to do them. And they don't want to be part of them happening. And so eventually you go, well, whatever happened to that? Well, nobody took it on. I am always willing to partner with people to plant ministries. I am always willing to partner with people to do things, but I'm not going to do it for you because I can't. I am one person, just like Joshua is one person. He can't go and take over the land for these tribes, but he'll help them strategize. He'll listen to their reports and he will help them to pick out ways that they can make it work. He says, I will help you with my expertise, but I'm not doing it for you. Same thing with God. God will help guide us and direct us, but at some point we have to actually do something that we are being directed to do. So the Levites, however, will not receive any allotment of land because their role as priests of the Lord is their allotment. This line gets repeated over and over and over ever since Deuteronomy. We've been hearing about how, since Leviticus, we've been hearing about how the Levites aren't going to work the land. They're going to receive a portion of offerings from everybody else working the land. Whenever you hear something repeated over and over, you have to ask why. Why is this being emphasized? If you ever worked in education, it's because the people aren't getting it. Or they're just not wanting it to be that way. So I like to envision there's a whole lot of people who go, well, if you just give the Levites some land, we won't have to pay taxes to them and take care of them. Why don't you just give them some land? No, that's not how this is going to work. Remember, in God's economy, the Levites are dedicated to serving the tabernacle and the temple, and you're going to have to work for their benefit as well as your own, because the work that they do is going to provide you with the covering of worship and the holiness of God. Just like we might pay taxes to schools even though we don't have children. But hallelujah, don't you want there to be educated people running around out in the world that are going to take a place in society that will one day maybe help care for you and your family and your community? So this is the reminder to the Israelites, don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. This is how it's going to work. The tribes of Gad, Reuben, and the half-tribe of Manasseh won't receive any more land, for they have already received their grant of land, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave them on the east side of the Jordan River. Why do we need this reminder they're not getting any more land? Well, these are the most powerful warrior tribes, and they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to taking over the land. Even though they already have their portion, they're coming alongside their brothers in the fight to take over the land. And they're going, we're doing a lot of work. Hey, shouldn't we get a little more? No, you've already gotten yours. Your brothers helped you across the river. It's your turn to help them. Don't be selfish. Verse 8. As the men started on their way to map out the land, Joshua commanded them to go and explore the land and write a description of it. Why do they need a description? Well, strategy for taking it over, but also enticing people to want it. You know, in real estate, how you describe a property is almost as important as the property itself. So for example, the new house I bought, you could describe it as, well, it's a fixer-upper that somebody lived in for 2 years and didn't do anything to it, including hardly mowing the lawn. If you describe it that way, you go, why would anyone want to live there? If you describe it as, well, this is a beautiful lakefront property at a more affordable price that needs a few minor maintenance items, but the location is an easy access to I-95. It's a quiet neighborhood with no HOA, only one immediate neighbor, a pond in the back, and a lovely swimming pool. You go, oh, that sounds like a deal. I want to live there. That's what Joshua is doing. Write it up. Make it sound nice. Make the people want to go and get after it. So instead of seeing the hard work, they see the potential. So the men did just as they were told and mapped out the entire territory into 7 sections, listing the towns in each section. They made a written record and then returned to Joshua in the camp at Shiloh. And there at Shiloh, Joshua cast sacred lots in the presence of the Lord to determine which tribe should have each section. People work harder when there's a sense of ownership. when you feel like this is something you own a piece of, or this is part of your legacy, or what you will hand down to your children, you're going to work harder for it. So that's what Joshua is giving them, a sense of ownership even before they begin the work. So now we're going to hear about the land given to Benjamin, and I pretty liberally skip some of these verses because we're talking boundary lines that, unless you have an innate geography knowledge of ancient Israel, a lot of this isn't going to mean much to you. So we're going to skip a little liberally here. The first allotment of land went to the clans of the tribe of Benjamin. It lay between the territory assigned to the tribes of Judah and Joseph, and it talks about the northern boundary being at the Jordan River, and then boundary making twists and turns south along the hills. And then the southern boundary begins at the outskirts of Kiriath Jearim, and from then it goes on to the spring of the waters of Nephtoah, and it goes there around a valley of the Jordan. And why does any of that matter? Jordan River means it's got flowing water on one edge, it's got springs on another, it's got some hill country to protect them from invasion, and it's got more fertile valley for raising crops and for grazing your livestock. So while we read these as boring geographical markers, they would have heard, oh, that's some good land. I can live there, I can make a living there, and I can feel safe and protected there. So that's how Joseph sells the tribe of Benjamin and says, get to work. But here's the towns that are already in that area, and he lists them all off. And we don't really care about the names of any of those towns as modern readers, but they would have cared to know, okay, these are the centers of civilization that are already there, which means there's already roads, there's already some housing, there's already people who have decided this was a good place to put a town. There's a reason why people tend to move to towns that already exist. You don't want to start over from scratch. And so this is telling them, here's all of the things that are already available as resources to you. So that was the homeland allocated to the clans of the tribe of Benjamin. Now we're going to get to the land given to Simeon. The second allotment of the land went to the clans of the tribe of Simeon. Their homeland was surrounded by Judah's territory, and included all of these towns and surrounding villages. And this was the homeland allocated to the tribes of Simeon. Their allocation of land came from part of what had been given to Judah because Judah's territory was too large for them. So the tribe of Simeon received an allocation within the territory of Judah. Here we have the first instance of God carving out a place and a space for people based on the inadequacies or the failures of others. This is always something to remember in life, in business, in relationships, that if we are not claiming our space and doing our work, God doesn't leave the work left to get undone. He's gonna raise someone else up to do it. And then when that happens, we shouldn't get mad. Hey, that was my job. Hey, that was my spot. I sit there in church. God's always raising up people to do work. We shouldn't get overly possessive of a place just because it once was ours. Simeon gets a good land, and they get some land that Judah, they'd started and said, it's too hard for us. We're not going to worry about taking over that piece of it. We're going to leave it alone and let the Canaanites live there. God goes, no, that's not what I wanted. Fine, Simeon, you take over. The land given to Zebulon. The third allotment of land went to the clans of the tribe of Zebulon. The boundary of Zebulon's homeland started at Sarid. It goes west touches over the brook east of Jaconium. In the other direction, it goes west to these towns. In the east, it goes towards these towns and turns the northern boundary, passes through and ends at a valley. And these are the towns, 12 towns with their surrounding villages. So we know they've got brook for water. We know that they've got several towns already, and there's a road traveling through a valley. Remember, valleys tend to be very fertile. They're good places to raise livestock, and they mean that you've got some natural boundaries of protection of the mountains around you. So Zebulon goes, all right, sounds good to us. Now we go to the land given to Issachar. The fourth allotment of land went to the clans of the tribe of Issachar. It has the boundaries, including all of these towns. It also touches these towns, and it ends at the Jordan River. So again, we've got towns for people. We've got water at the river. Seems like a good amount. And remember, they're given these according to the size of their tribe. So some of these lands are larger, some of them are smaller, because you know what happens when your house is too big for you? The corners get real dusty and cluttered, and you start shrinking in until you have just the area that you really take care of and use and live in, and all the rest of it's just kind of, well, it's there. Same thing. If we give a huge land to people who aren't capable of caring for it, it's going to grow wild. It's going to get encumbered with lots of rodents and beasts and all kinds of things. So God gives them what they can handle. A little aspirational for growth, but not so much that they're overwhelmed by how hard it would be to take care of. So we have gone through Issachar, and now we're going to Asher. The fifth allotment of land went to the clans of the tribe of Asher, and the boundaries include these towns. It turns east and ran as far as Zebulon in the valley of Iptah. It goes north towards these other towns, and then the boundary turns towards Ramah and the fortress of Tyre, where it turned towards and came to the Mediterranean Sea, and includes 22 towns with their surrounding villages. So here we hear that we've got a boundary that runs through a valley. They've got a fortress on one end, and their territory includes coming up to the Mediterranean Sea. So they've got water for easy travel and access. They've got valleys for fertile lands, and they have lots of towns and villages that they can take over and spread out in. Again, as weird as it reads to us, this is a real estate sales pitch to the people. The land given to Naphtali, this is the sixth allotment of the land which went to the tribe of Naphtali. Its boundary runs across these towns, ending at the Jordan River, west, running to touch the border of Zebulon and the border of Asher. And then it has fortified towns. This means that they have walls or other sources of natural protection in these other places, along with their surrounding villages. So Naphtali has a valley, and it ends at the Jordan River. So they've got water, and they've got some fortified towns and structures that, yeah, they're going to be hard to take over. But once you do, you'll be very secure. The homeland allocated to the tribes of Naphtali included all these towns and their surrounding villages. Next, we come to the land given to Dan. The seventh allotment of land went to the clans of the tribe of Dan. The land included as their homeland the following towns, but the tribe of Dan had trouble taking possession of their land. So they attacked the town of Laish, they captured it, slaughtered its people, and settled there. They're like, well, that was hard. These look like easy pickings. We'll do this area over here instead. And they renamed the town Dan after their ancestor. So the homeland allotted to the clans of the tribe of Dan included these towns and their surrounding villages. So again, we hear already a tribe that's going, that's too hard. We don't want to do that. And so they have all of these towns that they leave in foreign hands, and they are going to intermix and intermingle and keep customs from some and customs of other, and it's going to be a mess. Next, we get to the land given to Joshua. After all the land was divided among the tribes, the Israelites gave a piece of land to Joshua as his allocation. For the Lord had said he could have any town he wanted. So he chose Timnath Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, and he rebuilt the town and lived there. So Joshua, as the leader, gets to claim his own place of rest and refreshment, and he chooses the hill country. Again, Joshua has led all of these people in battle. The hill country gives you rest because it's real hard to take a city on a hill. Real hard. And Joshua, after leading all of this battle, is going, I'm about tired of that. Yeah, it's real fertile land down in the valley, but you're going to have to fight to keep it. I'm good up here. So that's what Joshua does. These are the territories that Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and their tribal leaders allocated as grants of land to the tribes of Israel by casting sacred lots in the presence of the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle at Shiloh. So the division of the land was complete. So remember, they didn't finish taking it all over. It's not all conquered, but they've said, this is your area of responsibility. Do with it what you will. Figure it out. Next, we're going to come to the cities of refuge. Back in Leviticus and then in Deuteronomy, remember, the cities of refuge are designated as places to flee from persecution. So if you accidentally killed your neighbor with your ox, or something you did led to manslaughter, these are the places you could flee and take refuge while your case was decided, so that they didn't just come after you and kill you outright and start a blood feud. So the cities of refuge were supposed to be designated to be sort of evenly distributed throughout all of the territories, so that no matter where you were, you didn't have too far to run. It was doable. It was possible. And so the Lord says to Joshua, now tell the Israelites to designate the cities of refuge as I instructed Moses. Anyone who kills another person accidentally and unintentionally can run to one of these cities, and they will be places of refuge from relatives seeking revenge for the person who was killed. Wait, revenge in the Bible? Yep. The Bible is oftentimes an account of how God works with our broken humanity. God knows that we get angry and we get spiteful and we hold grudges and we're going to want revenge to get our own back. God doesn't just move from that reality of where we are to say, well, just be nice and love everybody. Give peace a chance. God says, here's how you're going to keep the peace. Make these towns for refuge. So upon reaching one of these cities, the one who caused the death will appear before the elders at the city gate and present his case. So it's not just you can run away from justice. You have to make your case. And then the elders must allow him to enter the city and give him a place to live among them. So the elders are going to make a judgment based on the story that you bring of whether you deserve refuge or not. If the relatives of the victim come to avenge the killing, the leaders must not release the slayer to them, for he killed the other person unintentionally and without previous hostility. But the slayer must stay in that city and be tried by the local assembly, which will render a judgment. So again, you get to initially plead your case, but when the other guy from the other side shows up, we're going to have a trial and we're going to hear both sides of the story. And the person who committed the killing must continue to live in the city until the death of the high priest, who was in office at the time of the accident. After that, he's free to return to his own home in the town from which he fled. And you go, that's a really weird boundary. Why would you pick, well, when this priest dies, then you can go back? Because there needs to be a price and a penalty even for manslaughter. Human life is sacred. So even when you don't take it intentionally, there has to be some consequence. And so this was their way of saying, well, the consequence is that you've got to live in this town and you don't get to live on your land and with your family and be at peace until somebody dies for your crime. And the high priest is the one who pays that penalty. The high priest, by dying, is offered as a sacrifice of atonement for the person who committed the killing. This is the prefiguration of Christ, the ultimate high priest, dying for everybody's sins now and for all time. But the high priest isn't going to be sacrificed arbitrarily, like, okay, we've got this many people who are waiting to be forgiven, time to the priest. No. However long their natural lifetime is the penalty you will pay. Because don't kill your priests. If you learn nothing else from this Bible study lesson, don't kill your priests. Don't kill them. Let them live as long as God will let them live. So that's what is happening here, is this prefiguration of Christ, that an atonement for life is necessary. Even when it's not intentional, even when you didn't mean to do wrong, you have to have some kind of sacrifice of atonement in order for you to go back and live your life. Think about it this way. If you're bearing the guilt for everything you've ever done or left undone, are you able to live your life very freely? No, you're haunted by all your decisions and all your past mistakes. And what God gives us in Christ is this ability to say, you're truly forgiven, go forward and sin no more. We still do sin. But the idea is to at least sin differently. Don't go right back into the old things that you were doing that were messing you up and leaving you racked over the coals. Go forward and live life set free. That's what happens with the death of the high priest. I lost my place in that very long verse 7. The following cities were designated as cities of refuge. So we have Kadesh of Galilee in the hill country. We have Shechem in the hill country. We have Kiriath Arba in the hill country of Judah. We have Bezer in the wilderness and the plain. And we have Ramoth in the territory of Gad. We have Golan and Bashan in the land of the tribe of Manasseh. And these are the cities that are set apart for all the Israelites, as well as the foreigners living among them. Wait. God's justice and God's sacrifice, even of the high priests of that time, was for everybody. Everybody in the land. So it doesn't matter if they're a foreigner, they still deserve refuge. This is where you get churches that get a little crazy and a little radical and start serving as places of refuge for people who are illegal immigrants. Because in our country and in many countries, there is no trial often. It's just you're immediately deported. And so there are churches who will serve as places of refuge to keep these people safe from deportation until their lawyer can actually work through the process and come to an outcome and a resolution, and then they go forth. And they get that justification out of this type of landscape that God's refuge is for all, even the foreigners living among this. The crazy thing is, these were the foreigners that God told them to kill. These are the people that God said, if you want to be at peace, and live long in the land, you need to kill everybody and start fresh. God knew they weren't going to do that because it'd be really hard and messy and a great high price for your soul. And so God from the beginning says, if they want to experience me and my justice, they're welcome to do so. You can't exclude people from salvation, even from the very beginning. Even people that have been condemned can find redemption, even in Judaism. So that's just a fun little tidbit. Anybody who accidentally kills another person can take refuge in one of these cities, and in this way they could escape being killed in revenge prior to standing trial before the local assembly. Again, it's not refuge forever. It is refuge until we're actually going to have a trial with people who are supposed to be impartial and hear both sides and render a judgment. So the sanctuary movement at its best takes in those people who still have legal recourse and gives them time to use those legal recourses before they would otherwise be deported or killed or any other outcome that's less than justice. So at its best, we give time for the courts to move. Chapter 21, we have the towns given to the Levites. Now remember, the Levites don't get land, but they do get towns because they still need places to live. They still need shelter. They just don't need a bunch of land that they're responsible to take care of and that they have to work the fields daily in, because then they're not free to do the Lord's work. That's why y'all pay me a salary, because if I worked for free here, I would have to go out and earn my income to live off of in another way somewhere else. And then I wouldn't be free to come and do whatever needs to be done in the moment, which last week was dropping everything I thought I was going to do and rushing to give someone last rites. If I'm out working a salaried job and I'm 9 to 5 somewhere, I can't say, I'm sorry, I need to leave today. Goodbye. That's why you take care of your clergy, so that they can take care of you. And so these are the leaders of the tribe of Levi to consult with Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the leaders of the tribes of Israel. They came to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan and said, the Lord commanded Moses to give us towns to live in and pasture lands for our livestock. So they're not getting farmland, they're getting pasture land. And why? What's the difference? Pasture is relatively passive. You don't really do anything to it. You just send your flock out with one of your sons, and then your son brings them back in. You can even have the women folk take care of the land when it's pasture land. There is record that even girls took care of the animals. And this would have been really common for the Levites, as most of their sons were automatically brought into the family business of taking care of the temple of the Lord and taking care of God's people. So the girls would do the traditional menfolk jobs. So that's why they had pasture land, because you still need milk to drink. You still need cheese to eat. You still need some meat on your table every now and again. And there's no Walmart to go and buy it from. So they have pasture land for their livestock, but not farmland. So by the command of the Lord, the people of Israel gave the Levites the following towns and pasture lands out of their own grants of land. So they're making space for Levites to live among them and throughout their territory. And you go, well, why? If we're all going to one day be going to temple in Jerusalem, why do we need Levites out in the northern hill country and over here and over there? Do you want to drive to the cathedral at Orlando when you need to meet with a priest? No, you do not. You want someone who lives among you, who knows what you're going through, who knows your life, and who loves you because they spend time with you on a regular basis, not just once a year when we all go up to Jerusalem for the festival. So the Levites live among them to be religious leaders and to guide the people in prayer where they are at on top of the festivals that they go travel to Jerusalem for. So Levites live among the people. That's why I live in Port St. Lucie, and I don't live over in, Fort Pierce or Orlando or anywhere where I got to make a long trek. Because if I got to make a long trek and you call me up and need me to come to the hospital, I'm going to go, I don't want to drive that far. Or maybe I'm feeling very charitable. Of course, I'm on my way, but I'm not going to make it because I'm too far. So live among the people. That's what the Levites do. Alrighty, so we have in verse 4, the descendants of Aaron who are members of Kohathite within the tribe of Levi, they get 13 towns. The clan of Gershon had 13 towns. The clan of Merari had 12 towns. And so Israel obeyed the Lord's command to Moses and assigned these towns and pasture lands to the Levites by casting sacred lots. Now, at this point, you might be going, what are sacred lots? They drew straws. They consulted the Urim and the Thummim, which we don't know exactly what they looked like. They were lost to history, but it was a box that your priest wore on their chest, and it had 2 stick-like things. And depending on how they fell, the answer was yes, no, or I don't know. There might have been a maybe. I don't know. But we've lost this to history, but this is how they would cast lots. It was a roll of a dice, a draw of straw. It was just the most equitable thing that they could think of, because that way nobody says, when you gave them the best land and that I want that town, their town's much better. It's like, nope, you get what you get and you don't mind a bit. So it's all just chance. But we trust that God kind of works through chances and circumstances and calls and equips people to be in the right place. So they cast their sacred lots, and then verse 9, the Israelites give the following towns from the tribes of Judah and Simeon. Verse 13, the following towns with their pasture lands were given to the descendants of Aaron the priest. Verse 17, from the tribe of Benjamin, the priests were given the following towns and their pasture lands. The rest of the Kohathite clan from the tribe of Levi was allotted the following towns and pasture lands from the tribe of Ephraim. The following towns and pasture lands were allotted to the priests from the tribe of Dan. And the half tribe of Manasseh allotted the following towns with their pasture lands to the priests. 2 towns. So in all, 10 towns with their pasture lands were given to the rest of the Kohathite clan. Again, the size of each tribe depends on how many Levites and towns are given. Go figure, if you have a church of 500 people, you're going to probably need more than one clergy person or more than one clergy family to help care for you. Same thing back then. Manasseh was a half tribe, itty bitty. They got 2 towns, presumably a couple of families of Levites to help guide them. That's the challenge of growing as a church, is eventually you will outstrip the resources of my ability to care for you. And we will have to supplement that either with lay people who are going to do some of the work or have more clergy, however that works out. But the idea being how many people you have is in direct relationship with how many Levites and towns are going to be among you. So some of these have a long list, some of them have a short list, because again, how many people can one family of Levites care for? Studies have shown that I can be a really effective pastor to 50 families. 50 families is really effective. I can know you all very well and very intimately. After that threshold of 50 families, you get to the point where it's, well, you know where I'm at. Come get me if you need me, and trust that you're going to actually do that, or one of your friends is going to tell me that you need me, because otherwise I just can't keep track of y'all. You're off doing all these things, and I don't know. That's why they had towns dedicated to Levites. You knew where to go find your clergy. Go get them if you need them. There they are. Otherwise, they're going to be doing their thing and the daily life of worship and sacrifice to God. So we continue on with this list of towns and where people go, and we're going to skip through because, again, unless you have a really solid foundation of geography, just take my word for it that they're very evenly dispersed throughout the areas, and they're dispersed in places that are easy to get to from virtually anywhere in the surrounding geography. So they tend to be the town that has lots of roads coming to it, or it's in a valley where you come down from the hill country and it's an easier trek to get to. So they're nice towns. They give them their best. They give them the best places to live so that they're taken care of and so people can get to them. Alrighty, so we're going to skip down all the way to verse 43. So the Lord gave to Israel all the land he had sworn to give to their ancestors, and they took possession of it and settled there. Asterisk. Over time, they settled there. They took it over. God gave it to them, but over time, they're going to expand their territory as they're able, or they're not, because they might be lazy and say, it's too hard. We're fine with what we have. Verse 44, and the Lord gave them rest on every side, just as he had solemnly promised their ancestors. None of their enemies could stand against them, for the Lord helped them conquer all their enemies. When we were reading through the boundaries of these places, the boundaries were conquered. It was up to them to work inward. God gave them rest on every side, meaning they didn't have to worry about attack from the rear. All they had to do was go forward from the outskirts into the center and take care of and overtake the land that had been given to them. God did give them rest on every side so that they could focus on that. Some of them just went, it's too hard. We're fine with the way things are. Verse 45, not a single one of all the good promises the Lord had given to the family of Israel was left unfulfilled. Everything he had spoken came true. God keeps his side of the bargain. Where it doesn't get lived out is where the Israelites don't keep theirs. So now we're in chapter 22. Finally, the eastern tribes get to go home. They've been helping their brothers, wandering around all of these places, helping them find their rest by helping them conquer the boundaries. And now they get to go home because they had made a deal. They would fight until the hard fighting was done, and then they'd go home. So Joshua called together the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and he told them, you have done as Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, and you've obeyed every order I have given you. During all this time, you have not deserted the other tribes. You've been careful to obey the commands of the Lord your God right up to the present day. And now the Lord your God has given the other tribes rest as he has promised them. So go back home to the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you as your possession on the east side of the Jordan River. But be very careful to obey all the commands and the instructions that Moses gave to you. Love the Lord your God. Walk in all his ways. Obey his commands. Hold firmly to him and serve him with all your heart and soul. So you get to go home, but don't forget, you still have to follow God. Obey the commands. Serve God, heart and soul. So then Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went home. This is why we end every service with a blessing, because you've gathered together, and now I'm sending you out to go home, to go out into the world, to the places you're called to work, to live, to recreate, to be with the people that you are on a day-to-day basis. And I'm sending you out with a blessing and then an admonishment. The dismissal is not actually a dismissal. We call it that because it's saying go home. But it's saying how to do it. Go forth into the world, rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit. Go to love and serve Christ. Go do this out there. Don't forget, you didn't just come here to get all warm, cozy, fuzzy with God and then go do whatever you want to do until next week when it's time to come back and give forgiveness for all that stuff we did. Is go do something where you're called to do it. This is where we get that pattern from, is Joshua. A lot of the ways that we worship as Episcopalians and as Catholics are formed out of the direct tradition of the Israelite community. So if you go, why do we do that? There's usually a good answer. Sometimes it's like, well, we've always done it that way. But the major pieces of the church, why do we do that? It's because God said to. And so we're doing that. Chapter 22. Then Joshua called together the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and I went back. This is what happens. I need to go to verse 7, not verse 1. Moses had given the land of Bashan east of the Jordan River to the half tribe of Manasseh. The other half of the tribe was given land west of the Jordan. As Joshua sent them away and blessed them, he said to them, go back to your homes with the great wealth you have taken from your enemies, the vast herds of livestock, the silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and the large supply of clothing, and share the plunder with your relatives. So they weren't just doing all of this and not getting paid. They helped all of the Israelites take over their towns, but they get a portion of the plunder. And now they're supposed to take it home to share with all the people who didn't come. Because remember, they left behind all the women, all the children, and everyone who was too young or too old or physically disabled and wasn't able to fight. So we've got old men, young men, and women and children, because you weren't eligible to fight in the Israelite community until your 20s. So we've got some young, able-bodied. We're not just leaving the women with little boys and no protection and nobody to do some of the work. They've got their strapping teenagers to do some stuff. But the recognition that they deserve a share because their hard work and sacrifice while you were gone is what enabled you to do all of this and still be at peace that home was taken care of. That's why military spouses tend to get a lot of perks, even though they're not serving, because they are serving. They're keeping the family together while their spouse is at work and away. And so I still, as a spouse, would get some perks and some things, and people go, well, you're not the one fighting. Nope, but I'm raising a toddler with my husband gone 86% of the time. I did the math because I was mad. Because even though he's in the Coast Guard, everyone goes, oh, they don't go overseas. Nope, they don't. But they're at sea 3 days and home for 1.5. But that 1.5 gets eked into because of the shore duties that they've got to do before they can go home after they come back from the boat. And then they've got to do some duties to get the boat ready to go back out. And by the time you get down to it, they're not home very much. So they bring all this plunder back to bless the people who kept the home fires going. Verse 9, so the men of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh left the rest of Israel at Shiloh in the land of Canaan, and they started their journey back to their own land of Gilead, the territory that belonged to them according to the Lord's command through Moses. We're going to stop here. I recognize this is not a chapter ending. Chapter numbers are arbitrary. We added them so that people could be in the same place at the same time in a book. sometimes where the chapter ends and begins doesn't make good sense in terms of where the storyline is. The storyline transitions right here. So we're going to pause and we'll pick up next week in verse 10 with how they're going to go forward living in the land now that they've finished dividing it and are settled. So we'll pick up next week there. And I'm going to unmute and end the recording. Bing.